The sky looked calm that morning, almost too calm, from the ground. It would have seemed like any other day, with soft clouds stretching across the horizon and sunlight reflecting off the wings of fighter jets as they prepared for takeoff. But inside the cockpit, things felt different. Captain Daniel Reeves adjusted his helmet and checked his instruments once more. He had done this hundreds of times before. Every switch, every button, every sound was familiar to him. Flying an F-22 wasn't just his job. It was something he trusted, something he understood better than anything else in his life. "Check in," came a voice through the headset. One by one, the pilots responded. Their voices were steady, calm, and professional. It was a routine patrol mission. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. At least that's what the briefing had said. Reeves gave his confirmation last. His tone was relaxed, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had learned a long time ago that the sky could change without warning. Within minutes, the squadron was airborne. The jets moved in perfect formation, cutting through the clouds like blades. Below them, the land stretched out in silence. No signs of movement, no signs of threat. For a while, everything went exactly as planned. Reeves kept scanning the radar, watching the clean, empty display. No blips, no signals, just open sky. "Too quiet," one of the pilots said. Reeves didn't respond right away. He felt it too, that strange feeling that something wasn't right. He had felt it before on missions that didn't end well. "Stay sharp," he finally said. Minutes passed. Then something changed. It started small. A flicker on the radar. Reeves leaned forward slightly, narrowing his eyes. For a second, he thought it was just a glitch. The signal disappeared as quickly as it came. "Did anyone else see that?" he asked. There was a pause. "Negative," another pilot replied. Reeves stared at the screen. Everything looked normal again, but the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. Then it happened again. This time, the signal stayed longer. A faint blip appeared near the edge of the radar range. Not steady, not clear, but definitely there. "I've got something," Reeves said, his voice now more focused. "Same here," another pilot added. Within seconds, multiple blips began to appear. Still faint, still unclear, but growing. "Command, do you copy?" Reeves called out. No response. He tried again. "Command, this is Alpha Lead. Do you read?" Silence. Reeves checked his communication system. Everything looked fine, but there was no answer. "Anyone getting through?" he asked. "Nothing," came the reply. The air inside the cockpit suddenly felt heavier. The radar signals grew stronger. The unknown aircraft were moving fast, faster than expected, and they were closing in. "Formation tight," Reeves ordered. The jets adjusted instantly, moving closer together. Training took over, pushing aside the rising tension. Then, without warning, the first system failure hit. Reeves' radar flickered wildly, then went dark for a moment before coming back online. "What was that?" someone shouted. "My systems are glitching," another voice said. One by one, the pilots began reporting the same issue. Instruments flickering, signals cutting in and out. Reeves tried to stay calm. "Stay with your visuals. Don't rely fully on the systems." But even as he said it, he knew how bad it was. Modern fighter jets depended on those systems. Without them, everything became harder, slower, riskier. The unknown aircraft were now clearly visible on radar, but still not on sight. "How many are we looking at?" someone asked. Reeves counted quickly. At least 6, maybe more. That didn't make sense. The mission briefing had reported no activity in this area. Something was very wrong. Then the enemy appeared. Dark shapes cut through the clouds at incredible speed. Sleek, fast, and aggressive. They didn't match any known pattern Reeves had seen before. "Break!" Reeves shouted. The sky exploded into motion. Jets scattered in different directions as the first wave of attacks began. Missiles streaked through the air, leaving trails behind them. One of the pilots tried to evade, pulling hard to the side. For a moment, it looked like he might escape. Then his jet disappeared in a flash. "Mayday! May!" The transmission cut off. Reeves felt a sharp jolt in his chest. There was no time to process it. Stay focused, he shouted. Another jet went down moments later. The enemy aircraft moved with frightening precision. They were faster, more coordinated, and somehow always one step ahead. Reeves tried to lock onto a target, but his systems failed again. The screen froze, then reset. Come on, he muttered. He switched to manual targeting, relying on his training. On your left, he warned another pilot. But it was too late. The sky, once calm and empty, had turned into chaos. Reeves pushed his jet to its limits, dodging incoming fire and trying to regain control of the situation. His breathing grew heavier, but his hands stayed steady. Regroup, he called. Only a few voices answered. They were losing. The realization hit him harder than anything else. This wasn't just a difficult mission. This was something they weren't prepared for. Another warning light flashed on his panel. Fuel levels dropping faster than expected. He checked his surroundings. The enemy aircraft were still there, circling, hunting. Command, respond, he tried again. Nothing. No backup. No guidance. Just silence. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow down. Reeves looked out at the sky. The same sky that had looked peaceful just minutes ago now felt like a trap. He thought about all the missions he had flown, all the times he had made it back. This felt different. He tightened his grip on the controls. We're cut off, one of the remaining pilots said quietly. Reeves didn't reply right away. He checked his systems again. Minimal function. No reliable communication. Limited weapons. The odds were clear. He exhaled slowly, his voice calm but heavy. It's over. The words hung in the air. No one argued. No one denied it. They all knew. The enemy aircraft began to close in again, tightening their formation, preparing for the final strike. Reeves kept his eyes forward, his mind still working, still searching for any way out, even when it seemed impossible. And then a faint sound broke through the silence. At first, he thought it was just interference. Static, like the kind you hear when a signal is lost. But then it changed. A voice, weak, distorted, almost impossible to understand. Reeves froze for a second. Did you hear that? He asked. No one answered. The voice came again, slightly clearer this time. Not from command. Not from any known channel. Something else. Reeves adjusted his headset, focusing completely. The signal struggled through layers of static, like it was coming from far away or from a different time. Then, finally, the words became clear. Call sign, Phoenix. Reeves' heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize the voice. He didn't recognize the signal. But something about it felt certain, calm, like it didn't belong in the chaos around them. For the first time since the fight began, Reeves felt something change. Not safety, not relief, but something close to hope. And high above the battlefield, in a sky that had already taken so much, something unseen began to move. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. Something that had just answered. For a few seconds after the voice spoke, no one said anything. The sky was still full of danger, the enemy jets still moving around them. But inside the cockpit, Captain Daniel Reeves felt something shift. It was small, almost impossible to explain, but it was there. That single voice had cut through fear in a way nothing else had. Did anyone else hear that? He asked, his voice lower now, more focused. There was a pause. Static filled the channel. Then one of the pilots replied, uncertain, I think so. Sounded broken like an old signal. Another voice came in, not from command. Different frequency. Reeves adjusted his radio settings quickly, trying to trace the signal. The numbers on the display didn't make sense. The frequency wasn't one they normally used. In fact, it looked outdated, something that should not even be active anymore. Before he could say anything else, the voice returned. Stay steady. The words were calm, controlled, but still distorted. It sounded like someone speaking through time itself. Reeves swallowed. Who is this? Identify yourself. No answer came right away. Instead, something else happened. One of the enemy jets suddenly pulled away from formation, as if reacting to something unseen. It moved sharply to the left, then dropped lower. Did you see that? One pilot said. Reeves did. The movement wasn't random. It looked forced. Then another enemy aircraft shifted direction suddenly, almost colliding with the first. Confusion spread across the battlefield. "What are they doing?" someone asked. Reeves didn't respond. His eyes were scanning the sky, searching for anything unusual. And then he saw it. It was only for a second. A fast-moving shape cut across the clouds at a speed that didn't seem possible. It was there and then gone. No radar lock. No clear visual. Just a shadow. "Contact unknown, high speed." Reeves said quietly. "Where?" Another pilot asked quickly. I don't know." "It's not staying still." His radar remained unreliable, flickering in and out. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't showing up clearly. The voice came again. Alpha Lead turned 10 degrees right. Reeves froze. It was addressing him directly. "How do you know my call?" He started but stopped himself. There was no time to question it. Another missile warning flashed. "Do it," one of the pilots shouted. Reeves made a decision. He adjusted his course, turning slightly to the right, just as the voice had instructed. A second later, a missile streaked past the space he had just left. His eyes widened. That was too close," someone said. Reeves' grip tightened on the controls. His mind raced. Whoever, or whatever, that voice belonged, it had just saved him. "Stay with me." The voice said again, clearer this time. The tone was calm, almost reassuring, like someone who had done this many times before. Reeves felt a strange mix of fear and trust. "Copy," he replied, slowly. The enemy jets were regrouping now, their earlier confusion fading. They were tightening their formation again, preparing for another attack. But something had changed. They weren't as precise as before. Their movements were slightly off, like they were reacting to something they couldn't fully track. "Second pilot, move up," the voice instructed. The pilot hesitated for a split second, then followed the command. As soon as he did, another enemy jet passed through the space he had just vacated. Too late to intercept him. "How is this possible?" the pilot said under his breath. Reeves didn't answer. He was too focused on the voice. "Who are you?" he asked again. There was a brief silence. Then, softly, the reply came. "Call sign, Phoenix." The name echoed in Reeves' mind. Phoenix. It didn't match any active unit he knew. No recent operation. No current pilot. But the way the voice said it, it wasn't a question. It was a fact. Another flash of movement caught his attention. The same shadowy aircraft, or whatever it was, cut to the sky again. This time, it stayed visible just a fraction longer. Reeves caught a glimpse of its shape. Sleek. Different. Not like the jets he knew. It moved like it was part of the air itself, turning sharply without losing speed. And then it was gone again. Contact confirmed. Reeves said more to himself than anyone else. At the same time, one of the enemy aircraft suddenly dropped altitude rapidly, spiraling down. "What just happened?" a pilot asked. "I didn't fire," another replied. "Neither did I." Reeves watched closely. There was no visible missile, no clear impact, but the result was undeniable. Something was taking them down. Something fast. Something invisible. "Keep moving," Phoenix's voice instructed. Reeves followed every word now, no longer questioning. "Climb. Now." He pulled back on the controls, his jet rising sharply. A second later, another enemy craft shot through the space below him, left 5 degrees. He adjusted again. Each movement was precise. Each command came just in time. The remaining pilots began to follow as well, trusting the voice the same way Reeves did. The fear was still there, but it was different now. They weren't alone anymore. Back at the base, operators were still trying to re-establish contact. Screens showed broken signals, fading in and out. "They're still out there," one of them said. "But we can't reach them," another replied. Then, for a brief moment, a strange signal appeared on one of the monitors. Old frequency, unregistered. "Where's that coming from?" someone asked. No one had an answer. In the sky, the battle continued, but the balance had shifted. The enemy aircraft were no longer in control. One by one, they began to fall back, their formation breaking apart under pressure they couldn't understand. Reeves watched as another one veered off course suddenly, disappearing into clouds. "Two remaining," he said. "Stay focused," Phoenix replied. The voice was steady as ever. No panic, no hesitation. Reeves found himself wondering, who was this person? And how were they doing this? "Final pass," the voice said. Reeves nodded, even though the speaker couldn't see him. He followed the instructions exactly. Turn, climb, dive. Everything happened in seconds. Then silence. The sky cleared. No enemy aircraft in sight. Only the sound of his own breathing and the low hum of the jet. "It's over?" one of the pilots asked carefully. Reeves scanned the horizon. Nothing. For the first time since the attack began, there was no immediate threat. "It looks like it," he said, but his voice carried uncertainty, because one question remained. "Phoenix, are you still there?" he asked. There was a pause. For a moment, he thought the signal was gone. Then, faintly, the voice returned. "Return home." Reeves' chest tightened slightly. "Who are you?" he asked again, almost quietly this time. The answer came softer than before. "Just someone who didn't make it back." The signal crackled, then faded, and then nothing. Reeves stared ahead, his mind trying to process what had just happened. The sky was empty again, calm, like nothing had ever been there. But he knew better. They all did. As the remaining jets turned back toward base, Reeves couldn't shake the feeling that they had just been saved by something that shouldn't exist. Something lost, something forgotten, and somewhere far beyond what they could see, the silence returned, like it had been waiting all along. The return flight felt longer than any mission Captain Daniel Reeves had ever flown. The sky was clear again, almost peaceful, but no one in the formation felt relaxed. The silence between the pilots said everything. They had all heard the same voice. They had all seen things that did not make sense. Reeves kept his eyes forward, but his mind was somewhere else. He replayed every second of the encounter again and again. The broken signal, the calm instructions, the way the unknown aircraft had moved. Fast, precise, almost impossible. And that final sentence, just someone who didn't make it back. It stayed with him. "Fuel check," one of the pilots said, breaking the silence. They went through the routine again one by one, but even their voices sounded different now. Quieter, more thoughtful. "System still unstable," another pilot added. Reeves checked his own panel. Some functions had returned to normal, but others were still acting strangely. It was as if the aircraft itself had not fully recovered from whatever had happened. "Stay close," he said. "We're not taking any chances." As they approached base, ground control finally came through clearly. "Alpha Flight, this is Control. We have you on radar now. Respond." Reeves let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Control, this is Alpha Lead. We copy." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a mix of relief and urgency. "Alpha Lead, we lost your signal completely. Report status." Reeves glanced at the remaining jets beside him. Fewer than when they had started. "We took losses," he said carefully. "Multiple system failures. Unknown hostile aircraft engaged." Another pause. "Copy that. You are cleared to land immediately." As the runway came into view, Reeves felt a strange weight settle over him. They had made it back, but it didn't feel like a victory. One by one, the jets touched down. The moment his aircraft stopped, ground crews rushed in. Technicians, officers, and support staff surrounded the planes, their faces tense and full of questions. Reeves climbed out of the cockpit slowly, removing his helmet. The air felt different on the ground, heavier somehow. An officer approached him quickly. "What happened up there?" Reeves looked at him for a moment, unsure where to begin. "It wasn't just the enemy," he said finally. "Something else was out there." The officer frowned slightly. "Explain." Reeves glanced at the other pilots as they gathered nearby. They all looked the same, tired, shaken, but alert. "We lost comms," Reeves continued. "Then we were engaged. Advanced aircraft, not in the briefing. We were outmatched." The officer nodded. "And then—" Reeves hesitated. "And then we heard a voice." The officer's expression changed. "What kind of voice?" "Not from command. not from any known channel. It used an old frequency. Murmurs spread among the nearby staff. It identified itself as Phoenix. The officer went completely still. Say that again. Phoenix, Reeves repeated. For a brief second, something unreadable crossed the officer's face. Come with me, he said. Reeves followed him into a secure building nearby. The noise of the runway faded behind them as the door closed. Inside, the atmosphere was quieter and more controlled. Screens lined walls, showing data feeds and flight records. Sit, the officer said. Reeves sat down, placing his helmet on the table. Start from the moment you lost contact. The officer instructed. Reeves told him everything. The radar failures, the enemy aircraft, the voice, the instructions, the unknown jet moving through the sky like nothing he had seen before. He described it all in detail, careful not to exaggerate or guess. Just facts. When he finished, the room was silent. The officer leaned back slightly, his eyes fixed on Reeves. Are you certain about the call sign? He asked. Yes, Reeves said, clear as anything. The officer stood up and walked to one of the screens. He typed something quickly, pulling up a file. This doesn't leave this room, he said. Reeves didn't respond. He was too focused on the screen. An old record appeared. Most of the details were classified or missing, but one thing stood out clearly. Call sign, Phoenix. Reeves felt a chill run through him. What is this? He asked. The officer hesitated for a moment before answering. A program that was shut down years ago. Reeves leaned forward. What kind of program? The officer didn't look at him right away. Experimental, he said finally. Advanced flight systems. High-risk operations. Reeves frowned. And the pilot? The officer's expression darkened slightly. Declared lost during a mission. The words hit harder than Reeves expected. Lost how? No wreckage found. No signal. Just gone. Reeves sat back slowly. But that's not possible, he said. We heard the voice. It guided us. It saved us. I know what you're saying, the officer replied quietly. But according to official records, that pilot never came back. Reeves shook his head slightly, trying to make sense of it. Then who was talking to us? The officer didn't answer. Instead, he pulled up another screen. This one showed fragments of old communication logs. Listen to this, he said. A short audio clip played. The sound was rough, filled with static, but the voice was there. Calm, controlled, familiar. Reeves' eyes widened. That's him, he said. That's the same voice. The officer nodded slowly. This recording is from the last known transmission of that mission. Reeves felt his heartbeat pick up. So you're telling me, he started, but couldn't finish the sentence. The officer closed the file. I'm telling you that what you experienced should not happen. The room fell silent again. Reeves stared at the table, his thoughts racing. Outside, the other pilots were being questioned as well, each one telling the same story, each one describing the same voice. There was no mistake. Hours passed. Reeves eventually stepped out of the building, the sun now lower in the sky. The base looked normal again, people moving, equipment being handled, routine continuing. But for him, nothing felt normal anymore. He walked a few steps away from the main area, needing a moment alone. His mind kept going back to the sky, to that moment when everything seemed lost. And then, that voice. He looked up. The sky was clear again, just like before the mission. Calm, quiet. But now, he knew how quickly that could change. A faint sound reached his ears. At first, he thought it was just another jet in the distance. But then his instincts kicked in. He stopped walking. Something about the sound felt different. He turned slightly, scanning the sky. For a brief moment, he thought he saw something. A quick flash, high above, moving faster than anything around it. Then it was gone. No radar alert. No sound. Just empty sky. Reeves stood there unmoving. Phoenix, he said quietly, almost to himself. There was no answer. But deep down, he wasn't sure that meant anything. Because now, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever had helped them up there, whatever had spoken to them, it wasn't just a glitch. It wasn't just a signal. It was real. And somehow, in a sky full of machines and noise, something long forgotten had found a way to come back. Just long enough to save them. And maybe it was still out there. The next morning did not feel like a new day. Captain Daniel Reeves had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same thing. The empty sky, the sudden chaos, and that calm voice cutting through it all. It didn't feel like a memory. It felt like something unfinished. He arrived at the base earlier than usual. The air was cool, and the place was quieter than normal operations. But there was tension beneath the surface. People were talking in low voices. Screens were being checked again and again. Something had changed, and everyone knew it. As Reeves walked past the control room, he noticed more personnel than usual. Not just regular staff, but higher-level officers. That alone told him this was no longer just about one mission. "Captain," someone called from behind. He turned and saw the same officer from the previous day approaching him. "We need you again," the officer said. Reeves nodded. "I figured." They walked inside together. The room looked similar to yesterday, but now there were more screens active. More data pulled up. Maps, signals, old records. Everything was being examined. "Sit," the officer said again. Reeves took his place, but this time he leaned forward slightly, ready. "What did you find?" he asked. The officer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pointed to one of the screens. "After your report, we started digging deeper into that program," he said. Phoenix wasn't just a pilot. It was part of a larger project. Reeves narrowed his eyes. What kind of project? One that was never supposed to be made public. The officer pressed a key. A series of old files appeared. Most were incomplete, but some details were still readable. "Years ago," the officer continued, "there was an effort to push beyond normal limits. Faster response times. Better survival in extreme conditions. They were testing both aircraft and pilot coordination in ways that were ahead of their time." Reeves watched carefully. "Phoenix was a call sign of the lead test pilot," the officer said. "Was?" Reeves asked. The officer gave him a quick look. "Officially, yes." Reeves leaned back slightly. "And unofficially?" The officer didn't answer that directly. "During one mission," he said, "the aircraft disappeared from radar. No distress call. No wreckage. Just a final signal, and then silence." Reeves remembered the audio from yesterday. "That voice," he said quietly. The officer nodded. "The same one." Reeves shook his head slowly. "That doesn't make sense. We heard it live. It reacted to us. It guided us." "I know," the officer said. "And that's the problem." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then another person in the room called out, "Sir, you need to see this." Both turned toward a different screen. A technician had pulled up signal data from the previous mission. The waveform looked unstable, jumping between patterns. "That's the transmission your team picked up," the technician said. "It's not coming from any known satellite or base," another added. "Then where is it coming from?" Reeves asked. The technician zoomed in further. "That's the strange part," he said. "The signal doesn't follow a clear path. It appears and disappears." Reeves frowned. "That's not possible." "Exactly," the technician replied. The officer crossed his arms, thinking. "Play again," he said. The audio came through the speakers. "Stay steady." Even in the room, surrounded by people and equipment, the voice felt the same, calm, controlled, almost out of place. Reeves felt that same chill again. "That's not panic," he said. "That's experience." The officer nodded slightly. That pilot knew exactly what he was doing. Reeves looked at the screen again. Then why hide it? Why shut the program down? The officer exhaled slowly, because not everything went as planned. Before Reeves could ask more, the door opened. Another officer entered quickly. "We just got something." Everyone turned. "What is it?" the first officer asked. "A new signal," the man said. "Same frequency." The room went silent. "Where?" Reeves asked, already on his feet. The man pointed to the screen. "High altitude. Moving fast." Reeves' heart started to race. "Is it him?" Someone asked quietly. No one answered right away. Can we track it? The officer asked. Not clearly, the technician said. It keeps fading. Reeves stepped closer to the screen, his eyes locked on the shifting signal. Play the audio, he said. The room filled with static. Then, a faint sound. Not words. Not yet, but something was there. Reeves leaned in slightly, as if getting closer would make it clearer. Come on, he whispered. The signal flickered. Then, for just a second, hold. The word was barely there. Broken. Fading. But it was enough. Reeves stepped back slowly. That's him, he said. The officer looked at him. You're sure? Reeves nodded. Same voice. The room buzzed with quiet tension. Why now? Someone asked. No one had an answer. The signal disappeared again as quickly as it had come. Gone, the technician said. Reeves stared at the screen even after it went blank. He's still out there, he said quietly. The officer didn't respond, but his expression said everything. Later that day, Reeves found himself back near the runway. Jets were preparing for routine flights again, as if everything was normal. But now, every takeoff felt different to him. He watched one of the aircraft rise into the sky, its engines roaring, cutting through the air. For a moment, he imagined that same sky filled with confusion again, and somewhere in it, that unseen presence. You thinking about going back up? A voice asked behind him. Reeves turned. It was one of the other pilots from the mission. Yeah, Reeves said. The pilot looked at the sky. You think we'll hear it again? Reeves didn't answer right away. I don't know, he said finally, but if we do, we listen. The pilot nodded. They both stood there in silence for a moment. Then, high above, something caught Reeves' attention. A brief flicker. Fast. Almost invisible. He squinted slightly. Did you see that? He asked. The other pilot looked up. See what? Reeves kept staring. For a second, he thought he saw the outline again, that same impossible movement. Then it was gone. Just empty sky. He let out a slow breath. Nothing, he said. But deep down, he wasn't convinced. Because now, it wasn't just about what they saw or heard. It was about what it makes sense. A voice from the past. A signal with no source. An aircraft that shouldn't exist. And a pilot who, according to every record, never made it back. Yet somehow, when everything was falling apart, he was there, watching, waiting, and choosing the exact moment to return. The days that followed did not bring any clear answers. Life at the base slowly returned to routine, at least on the surface. Jets continued to take off and land. Pilots went through briefings. Technicians worked on aircraft like they always did. But underneath that normal rhythm, something had changed. Captain Daniel Reeves could feel in the way people spoke, in the way they paused before answering certain questions, in the way conversation stopped when someone mentioned the mission. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something deeper, something harder to explain. Reeves tried to focus on his duties, but his mind kept going back to the same thing. The voice, not just what it said, but how it said it. Calm, steady, certain, like someone who had already seen everything that could go wrong and knew exactly how to respond. That kind of control didn't come from nowhere. One evening, long after most of the base had quieted down, Reeves found himself back in the operations room. The lights were dim, and only a few screens were still active. He wasn't supposed to be there at that hour, but no one stopped him. He walked over to one of the terminals and sat down. For a moment, he just stared at the blank screen. Then he started searching. Old records, archive missions, anything connected to the call sign Phoenix. Most of the files were restricted or incomplete, sections missing, data erased, but every now and then a small piece slipped through. A flight log with partial coordinates, a test report with heavy redactions, a short note about unusual signal persistence. Reeves leaned closer. Persistence. That word stood out. He opened another file. This one contained a brief summary of the final mission connected to Phoenix. The details were limited, but one line caught his attention. Signal remained active beyond expected loss point. Reeves frowned. What does that even mean? He muttered. If the aircraft had been lost, The signal should have ended, unless... He sat back slowly. Unless something had kept it going. The thought stayed with him. Before he could dig deeper, a soft sound came from one of the nearby speakers. A faint crackle. Reeves froze. He turned his head slowly toward the sound. The screen in front of him flickered once. Then again, his heart started to beat faster. "No way," he whispered. The speaker crackled again. Static filled the room. Reeves didn't move. He didn't even breathe properly. He just listened. For a moment, it sounded like nothing but noise. Then, "You're still looking." The voice was faint, but clear enough. Reeves stood up so quickly that his chair slid back slightly. "Phoenix," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Silence followed. Then the static returned, stronger this time. "I knew it," Reeves said, stepping closer to the console. "You're still out there." A pause. Then the voice came again, softer now. "Not where you think." Reeves shook his head slightly, trying to understand. "What does that mean?" he asked. No answer. The signal faded, then came back again, weaker. "You made it back," the voice said. Reeves felt something tighten in his chest. "Because of you," he replied. There was a longer pause this time. When the voice returned, it carried something different, not just calm, something human. "That was the mission," it said. Reeves closed his eyes for a second. "Your mission was over," he said. "Years ago." Another crackle. "Some missions don't end," the voice replied. Reeves opened his eyes again, staring at the screen. "What happened to you?" he asked. For the first time, there was no immediate response. The silence stretched. Reeves wondered if the signal had dropped again. Then, "Lost signal, not lost purpose." The words came broken, like pieces of something larger. Reeves tried to make sense of them. "You stayed?" he asked. "Out there?" No clear answer came, just a faint hum through the speakers. Reeves leaned on the edge of the console. "Why, help us?" he asked quietly. The reply came almost immediately this time. "Because someone should." Reeves swallowed. The simplicity of the answer hit harder than anything else. Not orders, not duty, just a choice. The signal began to weaken again. "Wait," Reeves said quickly. "Can we find you? Can we bring you back?" The static grew louder. "No," the voice said. The word was clear. Final. Reeves felt a heaviness settle in his chest. "Why not?" he asked. A pause. Then, "Already where I need to be." The signal flickered. Reeves knew it was fading. "Will we hear you again?" he asked. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, "One last time," the voice came through. "When needed." The speakers went silent. The screen returned to normal. And just like that, it was over. Reeves stood there for a long time, not moving. The room felt empty again, but not the same kind of empty as before. This time it felt understood. He slowly sat back down, his mind replaying every word. Some missions don't end. The thought stayed with him. The next day, Reeves returned to the runway. The sky stretched out above him, clear and endless. He watched as another jet lifted into the air, disappearing into the distance. For a moment, everything looked normal. Then his instrument on his wrist gave a small, brief flicker. Just once. Reeves looked down at it. Nothing unusual showed. But when he looked back up at the sky, he saw it. A tiny, fast-moving shape far above. So quick that anyone else might have missed it. It didn't stay long. Just a second. Then gone. Reeves didn't call it out. He didn't point. He just watched. And then, quietly, almost like a habit now, he said, "Copy that." The wind moved softly across the runway. The sky remained calm. But Reeves knew something most people didn't. Somewhere out there, beyond what radar could see, a signal was still active. A mission was still ongoing. And a voice that should have been lost was still listening.